Well, good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar from TENS, the Episcopal Network for Stewardship. My name is David Gerhard, and I am the Executive Director of TENS. I'm joining you from my den here in San Francisco, California, where I also serve as Canon for Stewardship for the Diocese of California. As a reminder, if you could be on mute when you're not speaking, that way the rest of us will be able to hear. So it's just a good reminder to mute yourself when you're not on. Thank you. I appreciate being able to join you wherever you are, and I look forward to presenting some information for you. Let's get into it today. We're going to cover a few different things in our time together. We're going to talk about the landscape, the fundraising landscape in which the Episcopal Church finds itself in 2024, some sobering statistics, and then we're going to transition right from that into signs of hope and how we can reverse some of the trends that we're seeing. We're going to review the TENS materials for 2024, the Walk in Love theme. Now, the information, the best practices that I'm presenting today are designed to be used with any stewardship program, whether you're using TENS or not. But if you are using TENS, we will specifically call out some of the things that our pledge resources share or have. But please know that it applies to however you do stewardship and whatever theme or materials you use. We're going to spend quite a bit of time talking about discussing money and faith. These are hard topics in church. Well, faith, not so much, but money, it is. And when we combine the two, it can be really difficult to have those conversations in a church context. So we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies, some tools to help you do that. Finally, we're going to end with 2024, what's going on in the world, what we're coming up on in the fall, and some ways that it might be helpful for us to communicate and think about that. This is no news to all of you who are in church and experiencing this, but it's worth saying anyway. Since the pandemic, we have seen a decline in membership. And that means that there are sometimes fewer people in our church than we used to see. We've gotten used to that. A lot of folks are coming back and still coming back. But there are some folks who have found other things to do on Sundays. We acknowledge that. And so we are seeing some fewer people than we used to. That's alarming for many of us. And we're going to talk about some strategies for that and how to improve that. But it's also a reality. And sometimes we need to step into realities as much as we need to change them. The other side of that, however, is that we've seen an increase in contributions and an increase in the average pledge amount. This sounds like it's really good news. More money in the system is better, but it's unsustainable for fewer people to give more money. We know that can't last forever. And so we need to find some strategies, some tools to make certain that we're making disciples and lifetime givers out of our millennial and Gen Z members, that we are creating stewardship programs that are sustainable into the next generations and that allow us to serve our neighbors and meet them where they're at. Since 1982, giving to religion keeps increasing. This is good news, and in the amount, it's increasing in the amount because everything is increasing in its amount. $144 billion being contributed to religious institutions across the United States. It's a lot of money. However, church is seeing less and less of the money that is contributed overall to charitable giving in the United States. Since 1983, when 58% of giving went to religious institutions, it's now down to 29%. That's almost a 50% reduction in 40 years. This tells us a couple of things. It tells us that our nonprofit siblings are doing a really good job at fundraising. And if there is competition on the charitable dollar, they're earning more of that money in the market than churches are these days. We're still the highest percentage, but they're gaining on us quick and they're growing. Why is this? Well, our nonprofits do a lot of direct service to communities. They serve people through healthcare and education and poverty prevention, through education, environment, all the things that our nonprofits do in the world. And they're great arts institutions and nature institutions, things that are really valuable and important to our society. They're able to connect with their members and tell them that their giving impacts the various work that they do in charity. So they're winning that market share because they're able to directly tell their donors, their supporters, that their gifts make a difference and that they're going toward the things that they say they're going toward. I have a feeling that church doesn't always do that as well as nonprofits do. We're sometimes a little humble about the impact that we have in our communities. And the thing about nonprofits that are directly servicing and serving people in their communities is that churches do this too. We feed, we educate, we seek, we serve, we help people who need help, and we don't always talk about ourselves that way. I think we'd have more success if we bring in more of the impact of our giving to our stewardship campaigns and help our members understand that every gift goes to ministry, every dollar goes to mission, all of our time and effort, our time, talent, and treasure are aligned toward those serving our neighbor and seeking and serving Christ and others. So how can we reverse the trends? How can we take a look at what's going on around us and start to reverse some of these trends? The first way that I'm going to talk about today is running good campaigns. If we run a campaign that is efficient, that is effective, that communicates the joy and the exuberance, the excitement, the mission and the ministry that we're doing, we're going to raise money and we're going to raise awareness. Our gifts of time, talent, and treasure will be more because people are excited about what they're hearing. We also need to be more diverse in the ways that we offer people to make gifts and the voices we include in stewardship. Every voice is important as every gift is important. And so we're going to cover some ways to make certain that we're telling stories of impact and that we are maximizing the ways that people can make a gift into the church. And finally, we're going to spend a little time talking about volunteer recruitment, the time and the talent piece, and also how we recruit and retain younger members. Now, earlier this year, you may have been a part of it, TENS did a webinar on attracting and retaining Millennial and Gen Z members. And we just did a webinar 2 weeks ago on the other two T's, time and talent, to really talk about your volunteers. So take a look at those. They're on our website, tens.org, and they feed into how we reverse these trends that we're seeing in the church. I want to talk a little bit about the theme that we've adopted this year for the pledge campaign resources that we offer on our website. And all of you have access to that. You can download it, and it is in English and in Spanish, in Microsoft Word or in PDF. So you can adapt it and adopt it and make it contextual, or you can run it as it is. It's all hinged on that offertory sentence that we so often hear in our congregations, walk in love as Christ loved us. This idea that we walk in love, it's a journey that we do with each other. None of us is alone in this ministry. We're all in it together. And so when we walk in love, there's purpose, there's alignment, and we do this work in community. So our theme is about those stories of how we walk in love. This year, we hope that you will implement great campaigns. Congratulations on it being August and you starting this work and not waiting till October. So you're already a little ahead of the game. This is good news because the more time you can spend thinking about how you're going to run and implement your campaign and making certain that you have the right resources and people to do it, the better your campaigns will run. And when we run efficient, good campaigns, we make sure we then cover everyone, we get the message out, and we're not panicked about it. When we run campaigns that are panicked, it starts to feel like we're anxious or that somehow we're separated from the practice of liturgy we have that's about ritual and that time-tested way that we engage. If our stewardship is panicked, it feels dissonant from our liturgy, and we don't want that. We want people to feel like stewardship is integral into the mission and the work of the church. Make certain that you have online and offline ways that people can make their gift and reach the campaign. So your pledge materials, your donation form, your pledge form, your gift mechanisms should all be, if they're coming into church and they want to use the plate, great. If they're not in church and they want to make a gift online, they can do that. Make sure you have your mechanisms in place. It's essential that everyone is reached when we do a campaign. So get out the word, preach on it, talk about it way before the campaign starts, get excited and build the hype. Use your social media, use your newsletter, use your announcement time, talk about this thing that's happening and the work you're going to do together. And most importantly, where that money, those gifts of time and talent will go and how that will change the church. If you're using the TENS materials, or if you're not and just have a way to call people together every week and reflect on what they're doing, draw parallels between the gospel that they've read and the work of stewardship in the church, this is a really beautiful process. We want to imbue the campaign in prayer and spirituality. I've heard sometimes folks stand up at campaign time and they're like, it's that time of year again. Here we go. We're going to ask for money. And it feels like, well, that's different somehow. And that's something we don't need to pay attention to. But if we are excited and prayerful and deliberate, then it feels like a spiritual practice rather than this burden that we need to put onto our congregations every year. So find the spirituality of your campaign and use some TENS materials or other ways to reflect about what's happening in church and to pray about it. The weekly inserts are probably one of the best tools that come with the TENS materials. They tell a story, and you can give one out each week of your campaign. We have 10 of them this year. And so however long your campaign is, you can use them, mix them and match them, use them in any order. They tell stories of people's walk in love, a journey that they make, or a discovery that they've had, a companion that they've met along the way. These are beautiful stories that people have shared, and they're a diverse set of stories from all kinds of people who are experiencing God's love in all kinds of ways. So take a look at those. Each of them ends with a series of reflection questions that can be used in small group work, that can be just have it, go home with folks and they can pray on it or meditate on it. These are designed to be reflective exercises. Testimonials, storytelling, is, I think, the most important part of a stewardship campaign. It's important because it relates the work that you're doing in stewardship, the gratitude, recognition of our abundance, and it makes it personal. These are stories of people's connection to the place or the ministries that you're offering your neighbors. These stories are often vulnerable and deeply, beautifully moving and personal because they are emotional stories. It's also peer to peer, member to member. It's not top down. And this makes a real difference in when we tell stories because we're sharing our own experience of place and moment with people and telling that story. So, well, however you run your stewardship campaign this year, make sure that there's time and space for storytelling. You can do this in a number of ways. A lot of congregations do it perhaps at the announcement time. You can also underscore this with videos on social media or written articles in your newsletter. It's so important to do some storytelling. Here are a few prompts that you might use. I like to ask people, what made you choose this church on your first Sunday, and then what made you come back the next Sunday and the next Sunday and the next Sunday? This is a beautiful springboard for a story that will get people talking about how they feel connected. It'll talk perhaps about the people they're connected to, or the ministry, or things like that. What program or ministry do you like most? Telling a story about that, a personal connection to our choir or our food distribution program, or the way we make soup for people, or the pastoral care team. These are beautiful stories that people wrap up and will tell about their own connection. What have your kids learned? What has it been like to raise a family? What have you observed in your kids after Sunday school or after being a part of church? What have they taught you about the gospel in how they act or react to it? Tell a story like that. This is a beautiful story. And kids come back with the craziest, beautifulest, most beautiful even ideas about what they've learned and experienced in church. Tell those stories too. I often like to ask people, tell a story of a time when church was there for you, when you really needed a community and you reached out and there was church. This is our walk in love. This is the work that we do beyond our call to be together. This is how we are there for each other. And those stories are super powerful and they're really beautiful. So ask them. As important as personal connection to place is the impact of our ministries. So make certain that some of your testimonials, your storytelling for your campaign, also talk about the ministries and their impact on your community. I call these ministry impact reports, but you can call them other things. What this does is, and it gets back to that question about what do our nonprofit siblings do so well? They use numbers to tell the story. A homeless services agency might say, we provide 1,000 people a year with a bed and a shower and a warm meal. They might say, a tutoring program might say, kids who experience our tutoring raise their grade point by this much, right? These stories, these metrics, the impact of our ministry is one of the ways that we can tell people or draw the line between their time, talent, and treasure and the work that God is calling us to do for our community. Help the church, help each other, help your members make that connection by bringing in ministry impact into your stewardship. So talk about your food program and then talk about how many people you serve through your meals and where the food comes from and how you distribute it. Talk about the number of backpacks you stuffed, where they're going and what they're stuffed with, and how that will help kids get back to school and self-esteem and all those things. If it's appropriate to tell a story directly from a beneficiary of one of your ministries back into the congregation, then bring that story in. about a struggling mother who's able to feed her family in a place of food insecurity because of the box of food that you give. From a resident in your neighborhood that talks about how clean the park is after your youth go through and pick up all the trash and straighten up the chairs and make it ready for the next folks. These are things that your church is doing in the community that you can talk about. Ministry impact helps us feel good about the gifts that we give and the ways that we share our time and talent. So please, please do some storytelling this year as a part of your campaigns. It's really important that we do some uh, work around planned giving as well, that we mention it as one of the income streams or revenue streams that our churches rely on, that our churches benefit from planned gifts because they've been a part of our ministries. Our churches were often founded through planned gifts or estate gifts. Look at the names on the bottom of your stained glass window or flip over your patent and see whose name is on it, or open up your hymnals. People have given things and money to the church through their legacies, through their gifts for a long time. And so whether your congregation has a legacy or heritage or bishop society, whatever you call your cycle of or circle of legacy giving, mention it during your stewardship campaign, that our gifts also come from that. You might have an endowment or bequests that are a part of your funding revenue or funding stream. Remind people that the burden isn't all on our now gifts, but on some of our later gifts, and that this matters to us. We often say that it takes 7 asks for someone to be ready to think about making a planned gift to the church. So find the subtle ways to ask for those gifts. Your pledge card, for example, might say, let us know if you've left the church in your will, or if you'd like more information about planned giving or how to make an estate gift. These kinds of subtle asks aren't hard asks. We're not holding a form in front of them and saying, sign on the dotted line. We're just reminding them that this is a part of the ministry. I see a questions come in that Jim writes, our cash and plate donation program has given out 15,000 this year. So Jim's a part of a church, you're in Arizona, right? That gives its plate away every week. What a beautiful ministry. And when you report that back to your members, they're making their gift through their checks or through the virtual gifts, their pledge, but then this plate gift that they're able to give away to local charities. It is such a beautiful ministry. And I thank you for bringing that into us, Jim. That's an amazing gift that you give to your community. Online giving is essential in 2024. The pandemic taught us that we needed to have our online donation machine up and running. And since then, churches have come to rely on it as another way that people make their donations. So I can't reiterate enough that we need to keep this ministry up and running, current, and adjust it every year. Look at the platforms that are available. Are you offering the best transaction costs to your members, or I should say the most favorable transaction costs to your members? Are you finding the platforms that work for people? Is your donation form updated on your website? Take a look at the TENS resource library. We have a whole section on creating good donation forms and online giving websites. This is a really important part of our ministry. If I were to come to your church this week as a visitor, and the plate came by, you'd get nothing from me because I don't carry a whole lot of cash. Those days are done in my world unless somebody gives me cash for a particular reason. I don't go to the ATM and pull things out. I use my phone or my debit card to do almost everything. And so we need to find ways that church can make giving possible while in church, mobile giving, or things like that. I've seen so many creative ways to bring this into our churches, and it's just an honesty. So, for example, you can put a QR code, a quick read code in your bulletin. That's that little box with squiggly lines in it. And when you hold your phone camera up to it, it opens up a website and you can have people make their gift to the church that way. Um, my congregation has little laminated cards that are in the pew rack. And so you can make your gift if you're a visitor, or if you're making your gift online anyway, and you don't have anything to put in the plate, you can put that in the plate when it comes through because it says, I've made my gift online. Please count it. Please bless it. One of the things I noticed in the pandemic when I was watching virtual services in my own community and also across the nation was that the offertory wasn't happening. When there was no plate to pass, when it was only a person with a camera and the celebrant in the church in those darkest days of the pandemic, we lost the offertory and I started to miss it. I didn't realize how much I missed it and why until I put the theology together that the action of putting something in a plate and then the action of moving that plate from the back of the church to the altar is a theological walk in love, is a journey that we make with the gifts, the other gifts that come down the aisle, the elements of communion, perhaps warm socks if we're doing a clothing drive, or canned goods if we're doing that kind of a thing. These things that we place on or at the foot of the altar to have them be blessed and recognized. This is a deep, important part of our liturgy, and our online gifts are a part of that. So I encourage your celebrant to raise the plates and say, we give thanks for the gifts that are here and the gifts that have come in virtually this month, to raise those gifts up and offer them to God as well. So our virtual gifts aren't silent, they are named and blessed. Because when we bring our stuff to the altar, our gifts of time, talent, and treasure, we are gathering them so that they can be blessed, broken, and shared with a world in need. And then the greatest thing through the Eucharist is that we also approach the altar and we are gathered, blessed, broken, and then sent back into the world that needs us and needs our love and needs our work. So this whole action of offertory during virtual stewardship can still happen. So make certain that you're intentional about it and find good ways to do it. I see some questions have come in and I want to take a look at it. Lots of questions for Jim about the plate and giving the plate away. And he says what we know, when giving is elevated, more people are excited about it and give more. So we often think, because we are finite humans, that if we give something away, we lose its importance or its value. But in fact, what that does is inspire more people to share more abundantly. Giving begets giving, and people get excited about that. It's the it's the theology on the side that keeps us from our human feeling that we're going to lose and says instead, no, we win. We gain more when we give it away and we share that good news with others. Jim, such a good ministry that you have at your congregation. Thank you. Beth says that she uses Givelify in her congregation. I love all the names for these platforms. And a QR code. That's great. Ways that you can have a platform that makes sense, a QR code in your bulletin. I was in a congregation a couple years ago, and they said, right in the bulletin, we know you have your phone in church anyway. You may as well use it to make a donation. It was a little funny snark. But that's okay. We can do this. It's not separated from our church experience. It's a part of our church experience, and it's a part of the way that we participate in that offertory. I talked earlier about diversity in our campaigns and making certain that we are maximizing donations by maximizing opportunity. All the different platforms that people use to give money, if it's PayPal or Tithely or Vanco or GiveLify or any of the other Realm people use as well, whatever you're using is great. And of course, your pledge and your plate are great, but there are lots of ways that people want to make gifts to your church, and we should offer them. This is another of those learnings from our nonprofit siblings, and it's called donor-centric fundraising. It says that we go to our members and ask them how they want to make a gift, and then we offer that to them, rather than saying, we'll take your plate or your pledge, and that's it. How do we maximize the opportunity by offering more modes of giving? And so I have a couple of ideas here. For those of us in our congregations who are living on retirement assets, uh, remind them that they can make qualified charitable distributions directly from their retirement accounts to the church. There's a tax advantage to this, which is helpful to them. I bet they already know about it, but remind them that it is there and it's a great way to make their gift of, pay off their pledge that way. Similarly, people use donor advised funds to make grants to a congregation for their giving. This is a beautiful way. A donor advised fund sort of works like a community foundation where you might put some money into a pot and then pull from it to make your charitable gifts. So some of our donors use that kind of giving. Of course, we've gotten pretty good at using bank checks or ACH transfers or the bill pay option in your bank to make a gift to the church. Great. Those are all really good ways to regularize giving and make it easy. And of course, mobile giving often gives you that, online and mobile giving often gives you that option of that switch that says make this gift a recurring one, and it can recur every week or every month or every whatever. This is a really great tool. Finally, members might want to make gifts through stocks or securities. Some of our members might be sitting on some appreciated assets. Avoid those nasty capital gains taxes by giving a gift of stock directly to your church. And if your church doesn't accept stocks or doesn't know how to accept securities, ask your diocesan CFO or diocesan finance office how to do that. And if you don't have a brokerage relationship in your church, the diocese does, and they can help you make that gift possible. It's a really important way that people can make gifts from appreciated assets. Give them the option of doing it. So let's see. Colette says, we love the Venmo QR code in our bulletin and a QR code to our church platform. Great, QR codes are so good. And Jim puts his information in there about giving away the plate. What a good ministry. And Adam asks why I state my pronouns. I state them so that you know what they are and how I like to be called. Asking for money and mission. How we talk about money in our congregation is really important. And whether you are doing sort of face-to-face asks, or whether you are doing, you know, maybe cleaning up your campaign at the end and you're starting to do some phone calls, uh, how do you talk to people about making their gift? I've given you 4 templates here on ways you can start off those conversations. And they're divided between, asking someone to renew their gift, asking someone, maybe the whole church is being asked to increase their giving. And so you might use this language for that. Also, when you acknowledge that a household has had a hard year, but you're still asking them to participate in the campaign, because every gift matters, no matter its size. So make sure you're doing that and have some good language around it. Naming it is really important. And newcomers, they might need more information or different kinds of information about why we're asking, why we're even running a campaign. They might not come from a tradition or a church that did that. They might not understand what our funding model is, so you might need some additional things to explain to them. The important thing in all of this is the assumption built into asking people to make a gift that says, "Will you join me?" This is so important because it implies that you have first made your gift before asking others to make theirs. I believe that a vestry, the stewardship committee, and the clergy should be the first gifts made and collected in your campaign. Those pledges should be the first cards turned in. Those gifts should be the first ones that are counted. And it should happen before the campaign kicks off. This is so that you can start off on day one saying, we have 100% participation from our church leadership. This says we're all in. And it also says, I'm not asking you to do something I haven't been willing to do myself. I'm making a gift. I'm asking you to make a gift. We don't need to talk about whose gift is bigger or how we're doing it. I've made a gift. I'm asking you to make a gift. Will you join me? Will you join me is such an authentic and integral question, because what it says is, I care about this and I'm asking you to care about it too. It's personal. It's also peer-based, member to member. Why do I talk about it being a tough year and still asking for someone's gift? I've found in my 3 decades of being a fundraiser that I offend more people by not asking them to make a gift than I offend by asking and them saying no, right? People can always say, no, I can't make a gift, or this is what I can do instead of what you're asking me to do. That's perfectly fine. But if I reject their gift before they've had a chance to be asked, I'm making a big assumption that they can't do it or won't do it or won't consider it. And what we go for in our congregations is 100% participation. However you participate, your time, talent, and treasure, whether your gift is bigger or smaller than it was last year. We have the stories of the widow's mite and other gifts that matter. All that matters is that you participate and that we give people an opportunity to participate and let them know how much their time and their talent and their treasure means to us. We couldn't do any of this work without that. Every conversation we have about money is a pastoral one. Whether we like it or not, we add stuff to our money. Hopes, fears, future, failure, success, joy, plans for the future, plans for our retirement, for our educating our kids, and all the emotions that go along with it. Money is a terrible receptacle for emotion, yet it receives it and it holds it, because that's how we've constructed our society. And so for better or worse, When we're talking about money in church, we're wading into pastoral territory. This isn't scary if our stewardship committees are prepared for the fact that when they talk about money, they might get an answer or an earful or hear more than they were expecting to. If we know what to do with that information, then we know how to handle the situation. What we can't do is bear somebody else's anger or pain. Sometimes somebody will say, I'm not making a gift because I don't like this or I'm angry about that. You can pray with them and whatever, but it's not for you to hold that. And it might be appropriate for you to say, it sounds like you should talk with the clergy about that or whatever, right? You don't hold that information. Similarly, if I find out that somebody, maybe they say, I can't make a gift this year because I just got a really scary diagnosis, or I'm about to lose my job, or I'm really angry with our priest. We should communicate that with our clergy. We don't want to hurt feelings, but we also want to let people know that let the clergy know that there's something going on in their flock if they didn't already know it. Now, we don't have to share details. Confidentiality and personal relationships are intact. But we can say, you might want to give Davey a call. He's struggling, or I learned something in our conversation that you might want to know about. And then let the person with boundaries and education, who we trust with our confessions, with our Eucharist, with our guidance, let them handle the conversation appropriately. Keep things positive. We're going to talk a little bit later about appreciative inquiry, but keep things going in the direction of alignment, of ministry. Remind people that every dollar goes to mission, and this is where our churches lead. I see a question from Anne. We have people who will not pledge but give consistently. What can we do about that? And this is one of my favorite questions to get because it's so sincere, and our treasurers really, I think we worry about not having pledge paperwork sometimes when people are also indicating that they're perfectly willing to give consistently. So I think the first thing is to notice that. So I get a gift from Davey every year, but he never fills out pledge paperwork. He gives it about this amount. So you might have a conversation with me. Hey, Davey, do you anticipate making your gift again this year? No paperwork needed, but we'd like to be able to count on it for the plate or for the budget and know what's expected. Then you can count it in your figures and your factors as you move into your budget planning and your goal setting for the year. I think another great thing about this is it's a wake-up call to church that I think we're at a place where future generations are not going to fill out pledge paperwork the way our parents and grandparents and maybe we have been taught to do that. I had an incredibly beautiful conversation with a young woman uh, a while ago. She was a consistent giver to her church, but did not want to fill out pledge paperwork. And I asked her why. Why didn't she want to? And she said, I don't want another debt contract. I have student loans, I have a mortgage. I don't want to sign another piece of debt. We know it's not debt. We're not going to collect people. It doesn't go on your credit report. But for people to feel like they're in a contract, that they're making a transaction with church, we don't want that. We want people to feel that they're giving freely and beautifully and joyfully. So let them negotiate how they want to give and do it on their terms. This is again going back to that donor-centric fundraising. People might make gifts online and use the recurring giving. I was in my own congregation last year, and was calling someone saying, we haven't received your pledge paperwork. We know you make a loyal gift. And finally, he like called me back and said, I'm a recurring giver. I toggled the switch. You get my gift every week. Why are you bugging me about this? I said yes. But we didn't know that he'd said yes because he just renewed it and figured out if we imagined him renewing his gift at that level, that that was enough for us. But we needed to ask the question. I think more and more this is going to keep happening to us in church. So we love recurring giving. If you notice somebody's a recurring giver, you might just have a conversation. Do you plan on giving at this amount next year? We just like to know so we can keep the budget going. I think it's a great question, and more and more we're getting it, and it's the world we're in. Lori asks, do we list them as signed pledge in the parochial report? Oh my goodness, the parochial report. Um, I would say I think there's a problem with the question that we need to talk with the Episcopal Church about the parochial report. What's a signed pledge? Somebody can change a pledge throughout the year. They can default on their pledge and nothing happens to them, right? So what's the difference if it's signed or not signed? I think what we need to look at to answer the question honestly is our expectation and intent behind the gift. If you know Davy gives every year and fails to turn in a pledge form, but you want to include it on the parochial report, I think by all means, a sin, ask for forgiveness later and put it in there. Because I think what matters is that this person is a loyal giver. They intend to make this pledge, whether they've signed a piece of paper or not. But let's work on the Episcopal Church and that parochial report too. Great question. Andrea says, are you recommending that we complete pledge cards for those people? No, I don't think you should fill out paperwork on their behalf. I think you should just assume that if they give regularly, they are making a pledge. So it's an assumption, and you can just put it in a column in your treasurer can count on it, but I wouldn't create a pledge form for them if they didn't fill one out. They didn't want to do paperwork for a reason. I wouldn't generate it for them. But find the way to tally that and count it in your own accounting system. Davy's going to make a gift this year. We know it's coming. He just didn't fill out paperwork for it. And we've asked him as many times as we've comfortable asking him. So it's a negotiation and an intention. We don't want to mislead, but we also don't want to miscount. I think it's a shame when we say we're only going to count your gift if it comes in this way. I think that's not why we set up church. I think we set up church to accept people's gifts and how they're able to give them. Thanks for the question and answer and the conversation about it. Let's talk a little bit about this fall, the autumn, and the place that we are coming to in our culture and our cycle. So it's going to be noisy, folks. There's an election. There are wars going on. There are protests about that. We are feeling a lot about our culture and our position right now in society. And in the midst of that, we also have a weird economy, and we're feeling it all over the place. This fall is going to be noisy. So congratulations on getting started in August, thinking about this before the fall hits us. But let's go into 2024 fundraising and stewardship season with a couple of things in mind. The first is that stewardship is never about shame. It's about joy and participation and future and possibility. There's no shame if you have to pledge less this year than you did last year. Every single gift matters. But also remember that not everybody struggles or doesn't struggle in the same way. Which what I mean to say there is we derive our income or our means to give from different places and different ways. And so if your family is struggling, another might not be. Don't assume that just because you're experiencing something, someone else is experiencing it as well. That sounds like common sense, but what I mean by that is to say, don't deflate your whole campaign because some of the people in your congregation are struggling. Others might not be because they get their money or they have their means in a different way. So pay attention to that. I like to check in with the clergy before I talk to someone on my list because I want them to be able to say, be gentle with this household. There's something going on. I don't need to know the details. Or they might say, you know what, I'm going to take this person and call them myself because there's really something going on. Great, that's enough for me to know. Let your clergy know, this is back to that reciprocity. When they want to take over a stewardship ask, allow them to. And when you find out something that they need to know, let them know so that we're not hiding things from each other. Church is about transparency. Yes, we have confidences and relationships, but we can't hold secrets. And there's a difference between secrets and confidences. So find that balance and get to know those pastoral boundaries. Let's also remember that we've been through tough times before. This is not new. It'll come again. We'll get through it, and it'll come again, and we'll get through it. It's the cycle of our lives. And so let's remember, as people of hope and of people of long wisdom, that we know even if this is a bad year, a hard year, we will get through it and life will return. We'll get back to whatever it was that we felt we needed to be at. Finally, let's remember that when our communities are struggling, the work, the mission of church that you provide to your neighbors is more acute and more needed. So if you have a food pantry and there's food insecurity and times are tough, there's going to be more food insecurity and more people are going to need more of what you do. And so when times are tough, this is when churches need to step up, even when it is hard to do that because our own budgets are feeling constrained. But this is the work. Jesus doesn't tell us to stop when it gets tough. We need to keep going out there and keep trying to spread the gospel, and they will know we are Christians by our love. We will show them that work and that love and that mission. When you are feeling the pinch, so are your neighbors, and that's when church needs to keep doing what it's doing. Speaking of that, I know some congregations are going into this fall with some real hard conversations to have. And so if your congregation is looking at a budget that's tightening, or maybe you even need to make some cuts, we can't stop our fundraising or our stewardship just because there are difficult times coming ahead. In fact, we need to keep that ministry going. And so how do you talk about stewardship and fundraising if your congregation is facing budget cuts or program cuts or staff reduction? Well, we need to focus on the mission. Focus on what you can do. Focus on the work that needs to be done. Focus on how your neighbors need you and how that might mean that we need to roll up our sleeves and work a little harder and need more volunteers to do this. If we can't give it through money, we give it through time and talent, and that those gifts are so important as well. So just because we have fewer resources to spend doesn't mean we're off the hook in offering that mission and ministry to the people who need it. That includes our pastoral care. When we get stressed, we still need to call the people on our pastoral care list and check up on people who,
Oh, did you try them on?
oh, Diane, we can hear you. So if you could go on mute, that would be great. Thanks. And so also I want to mention that if your diocese, I'm sorry, if your congregation has asked for some help around whatever budget experience you're having, assessment relief or other outside funding, and you've asked for grant funding from your deanery or a community foundation, mention that as a part of your stewardship cycle, because what that says is our leaders are paying attention. We care about this. We're trying everything we can to make certain that we don't have to cut our budget. And we're all in this together. It's not just on our members, but the leadership also. We are deeply invested in solving this problem. Finally, there might be someone in your congregation and you might be saving them for that big ask that's coming up when the roof needs to be replaced or the boiler is going to go out or something. But this might be the time that they can write that extraordinary check. Maybe they've come to you and said, I have this to give, or I'd like to do this. And you said, next year we're going to do this big thing. And that's when I could really use, but maybe it's this year that you need it. Maybe saving the kids program is the right thing to call this person in and ask for their extraordinary gifts. So know when to use that, be in discernment about that. If you are in that experience of having someone in your congregation that can step up and do some extraordinary gift giving, know when to say yes to that. Finally, how do we talk about stewardship in times of uncertainty? Well, folks, we're always in uncertain times. This is nothing new to the church. Go back and read the book of Acts. The first and second century were pretty crazy times. We were persecuted. We built a movement anyway. We almost extinguished ourselves as Christians in the Dark Ages, but we came back and rebuilt and resurrected. The Reformation almost tore us apart, but we figured our way through that as well. And we've found ways to stay in dialogue, even with people that we disagree with. Churches have been through uncertainty for our entire existence. We have 2,000 years of good coping skills, good mechanisms on how to deal with uncertainty. And so this isn't the first time, it won't be the last time. Believe this is our hope. This is the Christian hope of it's all going to be okay, all shall be well, we're building a new heaven. All of those very honest, serious moments that we get in our scripture and tradition that remind us that no matter how bleak it looks, there's something to look forward to. Also, we don't write our pledges in blood or chisel them in stone. You can change a pledge. So I've had people come up to me at the beginning of a campaign and say, I might be losing my job next year. It's going to be really hard. I don't want to commit to the pledge campaign. And I'd say to them, you know, I hope that you will make a gift of time, talent, and treasure. There are lots of ways for you to participate, and we want you to make the right gift for your household. And you can always change it. If your situation changes, you can change it later, and there's no harm in that. And it's just an email or letting the clergy know or whoever. It's so simple. You can change your pledge. We can also ask for gifts from channels that are performing well, appreciated assets. So when people are having uncertain times, but the stock market is performing well, you might say, would you consider making a gift from securities and avoiding that capital gains tax? And we have some ways to help you with that. Every gift matters, no matter its size, no matter how it comes in or when it comes in. Any advice for a congregation with new interim priests, says Karen. Well, stewardship still needs to happen. It's still a ministry that needs to happen. I will share with you a resource that I created for Jim's church earlier this year when they were going through transition, which is called Stewardship in a Time of Transition. And it helps us know what during that interim ministry we should be focusing on, how we keep the stewardship ministry alive, what to focus on, because the worst thing we can do is say, we don't have a firm leader, we're not paying as much, and so we should give less. Any of these things that will make it really impossible for the next leader we call to step into a situation that's healthy and well-funded and ready to go. We want to make that the reality, not to pull back our gifts during the transition. So it's so important that we make those gifts. So thank you for that question. I love that one. I will share that resource when I share the whole documents with you. I want to talk now about appreciative inquiry. This is a way to have conversations about our gifts and our giving in church that focuses on the future. Appreciative inquiry is asset-based rather than deficit-based. It focuses on things we can do instead of things that we tried and didn't work. It focuses on what we have instead of what we don't have. And so this is a great tool for building up the spirit of stewardship, of appreciative gifts, of time, talent, and treasure that really recognize the abundance and the gratitude we have for all the gifts that God has given us. So I have a few prompts that I like to use in maybe a Christian formation program around stewardship, or to ask in the stewardship process. What ministry of our congregation is most hopeful or most exciting to you? And the word there that's important is hopeful, because that kicks us into thinking about the future, thinking about where we're going to be able to follow Christ into the world to seek and serve, to do that work of building and growing God's kingdom. So what are you most excited about? What's most hopeful to you? Similarly, I love the question, if money were no object, what ministry would you start here? What's your moonshot? What's your crazy idea? Because some of the best ideas in church come from this question. And then you discover, oh, well, maybe we don't need as much money as we thought we needed for that. Maybe we really want to do this ministry and we can find a shoestring way to do it, or some roll up your sleeves way to do it. And then we can create more of a program out of it. It can also be a great way to say our neighborhood has changed and needs new things from us. So maybe we can try out some new ministries. You know, a neighborhood that used to have lots of kids in it and families, and now maybe those folks are retired and their kids have gone away to college and other jobs and other things in their lives. Well, that neighborhood now needs different things from you, your church. So how can you maybe start thinking about new ministries and transitioning some things? This question is a great one to get people thinking about, what should we be doing? Where should we be going? Among my work with TENS is leading congregations through community needs assessments, where we take Jesus' advice literally to walk 2 by 2 into the community and see what needs to be done, see what isn't being done, see who is being served, who isn't being served, and bring all that back to church and have a conversation about it, where we learn, like from observing our neighborhoods and our communities, what services our churches might offer and how that might be future focused. Another good question to ask in appreciative inquiry is, who's doing this work? This gets back to our nonprofit siblings that are located in our neighborhoods and are providing great service. And so maybe we don't have to reinvent a wheel that they've already built. We can join them in their mission and ministry and find some ways that our members can use their time and talent, maybe receive some gifts back from them. It can start a relationship and a whole new ministry. I think the most important question on this list for me is, what of your gifts are you most willing to share with your church? And this asks people to dig deep. Beyond what is your treasure, or what is your time, but like what skills do you have that you've acquired, either the talents you were born with or the skills you've acquired through your education or your job experience or life experience. What would you like to do? Are you a good baker and you want to start a bread making ministry? Are you a good knitter and you could teach people how to make blankets for newborns or fuzzy wool caps for cold weather or whatever you do? What are the gifts that people have in your congregation that they are just itching to give? Ask that question and see what kinds of beautiful things come out of it. If you're using the TENS materials this year, the pledge or promise card has one side of it for our treasure and the other side for our time and talent. Or actually, this year we're using one side for your wealth and one side for your works and your wisdom. So it asks those questions. What ministry would you like to do? What would you like to learn more about? And what is a gift that you have that you'd like to share with the church? Asking those questions from people will unlock all kinds of beautiful gifts for your congregation. I want to wrap up by talking about our timeline before we get into any other questions that you might have. So if you're doing letters, we suggest a letter from clergy, from your wardens, and from your campaign chair. Send that first letter that says, this is our theme. Stewardship campaign is about to happen. We're moving into this part of our time together in the church year. So send that about 4 weeks before your kickoff so that people have time to build up the hype. Whenever I say send out something, I also mean post it on your Facebook, send it in the newsletter, and start making announcements about it in church. Similarly, about 2 weeks before kickoff, that letter from the wardens talking about the way they've observed people making gifts throughout the year and what it means to the congregation to lead that and how we're a part of that together. This is a great time to do that work. It's also a really good time 2 weeks before kickoff to make sure that your online donation form works. Send a $1 test pledge through and make sure that it's accepted. Also make sure that the emails that come out of that, the autoresponders, all have the right language, that they're tweaked for this year, that not using last year's language. I learned that the hard way once. I don't want to be thanking someone for their 2021 gift. I want to be thanking someone for their 2024 gift. So make sure that we just take a look at that. Make sure your technology works and is ready to go. Finally, at kickoff, announce where you're already at. You have 100% participation from your clergy and your leadership. This is great news. We already have a tailwind pushing us along. We're ready to go into the campaign. Show those pledge cards or put them in the packet at the back of the church, email them out, mail them out, and whatever other information is going along with your stewardship materials, maybe a budget, maybe a narrative budget, maybe your trifold brochure, whatever you use, have all that information ready to go. This means you have to plan for it a few weeks before kickoff, right? I've seen kickoffs where they're like, well, we don't have all the materials yet. They didn't come back from the printer. So we're kicking off today, but you'll have pledge cards next week. And well, that defeats the purpose of having a kickoff. So make sure you look at the timeline and leave enough time and get the materials in so that when you launch, when it's time to launch, you have all your pieces in place and you're ready to go. I see a question. Amy asks, do I have examples of the letters? They are, yes, they are part of the TENS Pledge Resources campaign materials that you can download as a part of this year's Walk in Love. We have sample letters that use the language of Walk in Love from clergy, warden, and chair. They're in Microsoft Word so that you can change them up for your local context, but it gives you some feeder language to start that off. Here's a question from St. John's, Oakland, in my own backyard. Welcome, St. John's. Uh, Wondering what I think about having a stewardship theme merged with a theme for the whole program year. Even better when we can do things that call our whole church year into being and follow that theme and that model all the way through, then stewardship doesn't come as a surprise. In October, it's fully integrated. So not everybody knows this about TENS, but we release our theme for the following year just before Advent each year. And along with that, we release um, the seasonal reflections. So there's one for Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, Lent, Easter, Pentecost, and late Pentecost, we call it. We put those resources in Advent so that you could start off the pledge year or the church year with your theme for stewardship and find ways to keep inserting that theme all year round. If you have another theme that you're already working on in your church, use that. When we're integrated, we're sending the message that everything is about our abundance and our stewardship and our gratitude and our recognition. It's not separate from our church year in some way. So I encourage you to do that. So this year, it's coming out. We'll drop it just before Advent, and we usually put it in our November newsletter. It's out, it's ready to go. Go forward and download, and you'll have the seasonal reflections. Now, what you won't have yet is all the campaign materials. That gets written in the first part of the year, but you'll have what gets you started on year-round stewardship, the seasonal reflections, and the theme. Next year's theme, by the way, is Tell Out My Soul. And it's going to focus on storytelling. We're just working on that right now. We're pretty excited about it. Finally, before we end our time, getting back to the timeline, during your campaign, find ways to reflect and be prayerful. Bring people in small groups or in other groups to use those weekly reflections that I talked about. We also give you prayers of the people that you can use during your campaign, a post-communion prayer, blessings over the plate, a blessing over the pledge cards or in-gathering, and ways to conduct small groups or online groups to have discussion for stewardship during your campaign. Know how you're going to finish your campaign, those gifts. So our campaign will end on a date, but not everyone will have made their gift. It's never happened. And so you'll have to clean up some giving. Know how you're going to do that, who's making those calls or how you want to handle that. Just have that conversation. Then I think the most important thing after a campaign is to send out thank you notes. And there are two different kinds. There's the one your treasurer or parish administrator or pledge secretary sends out that says, Davey, thank you for your gift of $2,500 in 2025. We appreciate it. And it lays out that sort of gift commitment. And then there's the handwritten note. And I suggest this does not have an amount on it, that this comes right from your clergy, your vestry, your stewardship committee. Divide up the names so that not one person has to do it all. And it's a more personal note. Davey, thank you for participating in the campaign. Thank you for all the gifts you make. Your coffee cake is always the best at coffee hour. It really is. Make those personal thank you notes because they matter. It says someone's paying attention to me. They love me. I'm included in this family. Before the Christmas decorations, or I should say just after the Christmas decorations are all put away and it's January, call your stewardship committee together one last time and evaluate what happened. How did it go? What did we learn? What do we want to do again? What don't we want to do again? And file that away so that next year, next summer, as your machine starts to build up again and you're thinking about stewardship for the next year, you already have some notes and ready to go. That's everything I wanted to share with you today. But I want to pull us back into our big group. And I see there's some questions in the chat that I'll get to, but also I want to ask and answer any more questions that you might have. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I'm going to move back into our window here. And let me take a look at what's been typed into the chat. Lori asks, any sense that kicking off at our annual outdoor worship service and picnic? Hey, it's a great thing. If you got something special and it's something that the whole community is a part of, it's a great Sunday to kick off. There's no reason not to do it then. So if you have some special event planned in the fall already, wrap it up in your kickoff and say, we're ready to go. I love that, Lori. And I also love an outdoor worship and picnic. I just think that's such a great idea. When we can get outside in nature, as beautiful as our churches are, it's also beautiful to remember that God created lots of things besides church buildings, and it's beautiful to be in nature. Elaine asks, what is a narrative budget? Elaine, I could not have paid you to ask that question because it's the right one. A narrative budget is a tool that spreads your fixed costs across all of your ministry areas. Those fixed costs, usually the largest line items in your budget, like staff and salaries and benefits, insurance, utilities, building maintenance, those things that are a part of your budget get divided out into your ministry areas. So your music and worship, your youth and young adult, your pastoral care, your outreach, whatever categories of ministries you have. And then what you have is a budget, narrative budget that totals the same number as your line item budget, but it communicates that every dollar is going towards one of your ministries. Because it takes a little bit of clergy, building, insurance, utilities to run your ministries, it gives you then, this is what our youth program costs, and this is how your gift funds it. And this is what our outreach costs, and this is how your gifts fund that. So a narrative budget is great. We have a tool on the TENS website, and I will share that link with you later when I send out all of this information that talks about how to translate your Excel line item budget into a narrative budget. It's a great tool and it tells the story of how your money comes in and how it goes out. Colette, I will give you my coffee cake crumble recipe. It's pretty darn good. I'm glad that you send out handwritten thank you notes. And you do it, sounds like every week. Wow, amazing. What a gift. What a beautiful service. It's a lot of work, but really, personal connection makes things not feel transactional. And that's how we want people to feel in church, is that they are personally in relationship with us. Anne says, our outreach is not in our budget. It comes under alms that people give. And, oh, I love and hate this question at the same time. Because I wish that all of our church budgets included all of their outreach as a part of their regular operations. So I think it sends a message about our theology when we separate out our outreach from our operating costs in some way, as if our outreach weren't one of our operating costs. It is, in fact, part of our ministry. But okay, so you're in a church that doesn't do it that way. And I think what you need to do is really say, here's our budget and here's what we spend on outreach. Here's where all the money comes in and how it's accounted for, and celebrate the money going out again. Because that's really, really important. We don't want to lose sight of it. And then, slowly work on your vestry and your treasurer to integrate those two budgets someday so that you don't have, why would our outreach be different from, the other ways that we love and serve our church and our neighbors. So some things to think about. Lori asks, what's the 2025 theme? Well, I don't want you to get too excited because we're still in 2024. We're still in Walk in Love. But next year, we're going to be Tell Out My Soul. And it's going to be talking about storytelling. It hopefully taps into that moment that we feel that we have news that is so good to share that we can't wait to share it. And we just are finding new ways to express our joy and our excitement about ministry. So that's next year's theme. Get ready for it in Advent. What other questions might you have in the moments that we have left to talk with each other today? While you're thinking about that, I want to remind you that I will send you the video, the slides that we covered, all the materials that I referenced, and you'll be getting an email from us. It might go out today if I get around to it, or it might go out on Monday. Either way, you'll be getting it very soon, so you can share it with other folks who weren't here, post it on your Facebook or your resource, whatever you'd like. The email will be from TENS, from me, Davey Gerhard at TENS, and it'll come. So take a look at it. Robin says, is it still okay to call it a pledge? Some are now calling it estimates of giving. Some people call it a promise. I think use the language that the most people understand in your context. There is some aversion to the word pledge these days because of that conversation we were having earlier about sort of debt contracts and people feeling beholden. And I get that. I don't want people to feel icky about stewardship. I want them to feel good about it. So if it's a tweak in the language that makes them feel good about it, that's an easy win. But use whatever makes sense for your context. If you're going to change language, this is true of everything in church, explain why you're changing it and let people know that there's a reason behind it because someone will ask. So this is just, I love it. I love changing language. I think it should be changed because language gets old. But when we do change language, we need to let people know why we're doing it. So go ahead and call it a pledge if that's what your folks respond to. Great questions and great interaction today. I really, really appreciate all of your gifts. Stewardship is beautiful work. It's also hard work. And I want you to know that I appreciate you and that you are needed and loved and valued by your churches. It might not always feel like that. It's hard work, it's sometimes thankless work, but you're seen, you're heard here. TENS has you and has your back. And we're here to provide resources in whatever way we can to help you out. We want to make certain that you have what you need. I just noticed, because I'm now seeing all of you, that it's the whole St. John's crew. Hello, Oakland. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you for this.
Great, great. Thank you all for being here. It's very Oaklandish, Colette. You are totally right. So, thank you, friends, for your time today and your Saturday. I release you back to your Saturdays to have a good day. Expect an email from me soon. And we'll be in touch. You can always contact me for any question at any time. I love talking about money. All right.
Thank you.
It's a rare thing.
It is a rare thing. You think you
All right, friends, have a good day.
Thanks, Davey.